This is absolutely shocking. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, is wearing a tiara for the German state visit that I thought was just a queen one, just one that we call the big guns. And that is the Oriental Circlet Tiara that was previously designed by Prince Albert for Queen Victoria. Now, it made sense for this tiara to appear for a German state visit, given that it was designed by a German prince. However, I definitely considered this tiara for Camilla, not Catherine. And so Catherine's appearance in this raises a whole lot of interesting and fascinating royal tiara questions, which we love to discuss here on Royal Fashion News. And did Catherine pull this tiara off? Will we see other things from the vault? And what about poor Sophie? Will she ever get a new tiara to wear? We are going to discuss all of this today. But if you guys haven't been to Royal Fashion News before, my name is Brittany, and this is the channel for all those who have a passion for royal fashion. So if you guys want to hit that subscribe button, I would absolutely love to have you back. And as I was filming this video, I realized I forgot to bring my own bling to this conversation, which is the Royal News Network crown necklace, which also matches the crown in the emblem here for Royal Fashion News. So this was made in honor of Royal News Network's reaching 200,000 subscribers. So if you guys want to check this out, it is absolutely amazing. Ana Lucia has a great deal right now. If you use code ROYAL20, you shall save 20% on this gorgeous piece. It's so special. I'm so excited. And I had a friend who I had lunch with on Sunday, and she looked at it and go, yeah, it actually looks really, really great in person. So if you guys want to check it out, feel free to click the link up above or down below. And again, use code ROYAL20 to save 20%. My study rings are from there, and so is this bottom ring here. So if you guys want to check that out, feel free again to follow the link. I would love to have you enjoy some of your own glitter, because as you watch this, you will, of course, be fascinated with the glitter that we see. So guys, this tiara has not been seen on the head of anyone in 20 years. It was previously worn for the first and only time by Queen Elizabeth II in 2005 when she was undertaking a visit to Malta. That is the last time we've seen this tiara. So to see it on Catherine, again, is a huge shock. I was definitely anticipating this tiara for Camilla. Seems to fit her style. It seems to have sort of a large frame, which seems to work very well for her overall. But to see it show up on Catherine, what is that telling us? Because Catherine is the first Princess of Wales to ever wear this tiara. The only women who have previously worn this tiara have all been queens. They haven't been princesses, they've been queens. So in my assessment, when I considered this tiara, I considered this a stable big gun tiara. Big gun tiara meaning it's one of the biggest in the collection, only worn by the queen. But this obviously, I guess, isn't the case, or the British are throwing out some of the rule book. Maybe. Is it good or is it bad? Again, we'll discuss this, but let's begin with the history. So how did this particular tiara, the Oriental Circlet Tiara, come into existence? So it was made by Gerard under the direction of Prince Albert back in 1853. Albert was the husband of Queen Victoria, and he is a German prince. Very important to note for later. So he designed this and originally set it with opals, which was one of his favorite gemstones. And in addition to that, it had 2,600 diamonds. So this was quite a sparkler. It's obviously quite big as well. And we just see that in the frame of it on Catherine. It was an Indian-inspired design of lotus flowers and mughal arches. Is very unique and very much remains the same as when it was originally created. However, it was sent back to Gerard in 1858 for alterations. And then they did add a space in the back so it could no longer be a circlet. So it's actually interesting to consider, because when we think about Victoria in this tiara and we think about it compared to Catherine, is that it's quite big on Catherine, and obviously Victoria was quite short. I don't know quite her head circumference. And so it's interesting that we have that little space in the back, and it's not an enclosed circlet. Circlets are actually very hard for women to wear in tiaras. Probably the best example is the Swedes, who have the Napoleonic amethyst tiara, which is very, very large. And what they've done with it, because it sets very high and it wasn't originally a tiara, they actually took a giant amethyst necklace and turned it into a tiara, is that sometimes it sits on the head of the women and it's very strange because it's just doesn't have a great shape. However, what we saw, I think that was best suited for that particular tiara because it's a full circlet, is that Princess Madeline wore it and back in 2011, I think it was. She set it sort of on her head like a normal tiara because this is a circlet. So sometimes it sticks up right here, but she put it back right here. And then what she did is she pulled her hair through the tiara or half her hair through. So it'd be like, I actually have an example here. So this would be a circlet, like a full diadem. And so Madeline put half her hair through here and then let it fall in the back, sort of like that. It looked better because it was all her hair. And you could, at that point, sort of like you couldn't really see the rest of the tiara. It was very, very interesting. So it was a unique choice. And I think showed that Victoria wanted to change it up, make it more flexible. And Albert, of course, had a great passion for jewelry design, and Victoria loved it. So she wrote in her journal in 1843, Albert has such a taste and arranges everything for me about my jewels. However, when she sent it back for alterations, sadly, before she got it back, Albert passed away at just the age of 42, and she actually never wore that particular tiara ever again. So it went back into the vault, never to be touched until the next queen in 1901, and that is Queen Alexandra. And Queen Alexandra believed that opals were unlucky. They brought bad luck. So she wanted to change that and she replaced them with Burmese rubies. So that is how we have the current iteration of the tiara today. And we also know, according to Gerard, that in their ledger, for adjusting this particular tiara in 1902 to Queen Alexandra's specifications, that they also took out a couple of the arches to make the tiara even smaller. So you can imagine how big this thing was. And reportedly, she wore it at the state visit to Germany, which I don't think we probably have any pictures of. I'll look, but I don't know if we'll have any because I think the only people we've ever seen in this tiara are Victoria, only in paintings, not in pictures, only in paintings, and Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. So it passed to the Queen Elizabeth in 1936 when her husband came to the throne, and it quickly became one of her favorite jewels. She wore it very, very frequently, and she wore it on her 50th birthday and in 1953, just a few weeks before the coronation of Queen Elizabeth, her daughter. And so this is one of her absolute favorite pieces. And even though Queen Elizabeth took over the throne in 1952, she never asked for this particular tiara back. It technically belonged to the crown, but she let her mother keep it until the end of her life. And the reason is that it was her mother's favorite. She was being a really, really good daughter. And she's going, yeah, mom, you can have this. I have my ugly Burmese ruby tiara because Queen Elizabeth II, she was many wonderful things, but tiara design was not her skill set. Was not her skill set. So she had this particular tiara designed. And so when Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, died, obviously the tiara once again returned to the royal vault. But I feel like in sort of like an honor to her mom. And I feel like in a way worried about wearing something that really belonged especially to her mother. Queen Elizabeth II only wore it one single time, and that was to Malta in 2005. Since then, it hasn't appeared on anyone's head until tonight, December 3rd, 2025, on the head of the Princess of Wales. And so why is this so important and historic? Well, number one, this again was tiara that was previously only worn by queens. So only a queen wore this tiara. So it's unusual for a tiara that's previously just worn by the queen to be worn by a lower member of the family because there are certain tiaras. So this is covered in a video I have. I'll link it up above called Tiara Politics. Where is that when it comes to tiaras, there's certain levels, if you will. So there's the big guns. These are the big ones reserved just for the queen. Usually they have great historical significance and they're the largest in the collection. So some of the big guns in Spain is the fleur-de-lis tiara, the Cartier scroll tiara that's only worn by the queen. Then you get over to Belgium, it's basically just the 9 provinces. In the Netherlands, it's the Stuart, it's the Württemberg, it's the sapphire. Those are the three big gun tiaras. But interestingly enough, there is actually an exception because people previously considered the Dutch Ruby Mellerio tiara to be a queen only tiara because it previously only appeared on the head of queens. But Maxima changed that up because she surprised everyone by wearing it, I believe it was in 2012, to the wedding of Grand Duke William to his wife Stephanie. So that was the first time Maxima had ever worn that tiara. And that was a big surprise and a big talking moment because, like, oh, we all considered this one a big gun. But then Maxima wore it. And now Princess Catherine Amalia has worn it, who will be the future queen of the Netherlands. So we do have a situation where that wasn't the case. And then we move over to Sweden because I feel like Sweden has also one of the better examples, where the biggest ones I would say are the Braganza, only worn by the queen, the Loschenberg, the Cameo, and the 9-prong tiara. Yes, it is also called, I believe, the Queen Sophia's tiara. At least those who have been long-standing royal tiara watchers often do call it the 9-prong. It is not a very, let's say, popular tiara. Now, there is exception to this because the Loschenberg and the 9 provinces have been worn by King Carl Gustaf's sisters. But we have a great exception here because Carl Gustaf was quite young when his father died, like a baby, and he had these older sisters. So he actually became king in his early 20s, much like Queen Elizabeth II. So when it came to his sisters, they were sort of the de facto little queens of Sweden for quite a while because they were all older than him until he married. So one of his sisters definitely did wear the Loschenberg. There is a picture. I don't know if I'll find it again, but there is a picture that does exist of one of the sisters actually wearing that particular piece. But the Cameo is also a unique exception because it has sort of become a wedding tiara, particularly for whoever is going to be the future king or queen. So Queen Sylvia wore it when she became queen at her wedding. And then we have Crown Princess Victoria, who also wore it. One or two of Carl Gustaf's sisters also wore it at their weddings. So that is considered a big gun, but loaned out for special occasions. But the Braganza, only worn by Queen Sylvia. It's the biggest of the big in Sweden. Denmark also has an interesting exception because the Danish ruby tiara should have actually been worn by Queen Marguerite. However, Marguerite's mother, Ingrid, left it to Crown Prince Frederick. So this very grand historic tiara became the property of the Crown Prince and ergo was worn by the Crown Princess. And it was the biggest profile tiara, or one of the biggest within the collection. So it was really a queen level tiara, but given how Ingrid had decided to lay things out, it was given instead to Crown Prince Frederick. I would have argued it should have gone to like the royal collection, and so you don't have to deal with the tiara getting sold or something like that. So there's a lot of interesting angles here to the big guns. And when exceptions are made, obviously, all the royal watchers, their ears are going to perk up. And that was the case here. I really like seeing a new tiara on Catherine. That has been what I've been begging for forever. I was really hoping it was the Persian turquoise, still holding out hope for that one. But when it comes to this tiara, it was a huge surprise because, again, I figured Queen Camilla, given on how she likes to wear particular tiaras, she does well actually with the bigger framed ones because she has the feathered hair to sort of make it work. I was really surprised that she didn't wear that one, given how historic it is, how important it is, and given that it was a Germany state visit. So why is that important? Because Prince Albert was German. And so for state visits, usually the families try to pull out the jewelry that somehow maybe has a connection to the country they're hosting. Obviously in Sweden, it's very easy when they're hosting the French because they have a lot of French tiaras. When it comes to the Brits, though, they have actually, I would say, more tiaras that were purchased from like Russia. They have at least 2 there. And most of theirs, though, have been created in country. So they don't have as many, let's say, extensive entrenches in other countries. So, like, for example, again, in Sweden, the Loschenberg comes from Germany. So if they're hosting Germany, Sylvia would wear the Loschenberg. Baden fringe, I think Baden is connected to Germany. So I'd imagine Victoria would wear the Baden fringe for the connection to Germany, those sorts of things. But again, not every royal family has those deep connections in that way. Scandinavians also tend to wear the historic tiaras connected between their families because most of them have traveled through the various 3 families. So anyways, Catherine showing up in that huge. Can't even begin to tell you what a big surprise that was. And I will have to say, though, I'm not totally sure the tiara works on her yet. And the reason I say that is that there are particular tiaras that don't work on every woman. So, when it comes to Queen Letizia of Spain, when you see the big tiaras on her, they seem to overwhelm her because she has a very angular face. She is quite petite in her frame. Like she's, I would say, somebody who is small boned. She's not like, 5 foot nothing. She's probably about 5'5", 5'6", 5'7". But because she has such small features, I actually feel like the big tiaras don't work as well on her. When it comes to Queen Maxima, though, Maxima, I think, has the perfect, again, it comes to circumference of the head, I think, and facial structure. She wears all the big stuff really, really well. Just not everybody can pull them off. And that was again, a bit of a surprise because I'm not sure if Catherine exactly figured out the styling here. I'm anxious to see if she wears something like this again, if she changes up the styling and does something a bit different. It might have helped to maybe to have volume in the back and to kind of do it all of the Swedes. Like I said, with Madeline pulling the hair through half of the tiara might have resulted in something a bit more interesting. But sometimes it takes you a little while to figure it out. And again, some tiaras I feel like I like better on certain women than others. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's just an interesting topic of discussion for sure. And the question then becomes why, though, didn't Camilla wear this? She just went with the girls of Great Britain and Ireland. Not very exciting. Although, interestingly enough, this I also found super interesting this evening, is that Camilla, Princess Anne, and the Duchess of Gloucester, Alice, all three of them wore tiaras that were previously on exhibition over the last couple of months, as if they're like, yeah, their tiaras are back. We got to wear these now. So when it came to Camilla, the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland was part of the Edwardian exhibit. And then at the Victoria and Albert Museum, we did have the Cartier Indian tiara that belongs to the Duchess of Gloucester. And we also had the aquamarine pine flower tiara also on display at that particular massive exhibition. I do have pictures and videos and stuff I'll share because I happen to see all three. So I just thought that was like, it was like all of a sudden they're like, yes, our tiaras are back. We're going to wear our tiaras again because I feel like they're feeling. But why didn't Camilla wear this one? Again, I feel like it fits her better. The one of the things I'm considering here is that I wonder if sort of weight is becoming an issue for Camilla. Now, when it comes to the Queen Alexandra Kokoshnik, Camilla has worn this, but she has gone with lower framed pieces for the diplomatic receptions. And so she's worn just the Belgian sapphire this year, which is sort of, I would argue, a lighter piece. So I'm curious if she's having some more difficulty holding the weight of some of the tiaras, or maybe the frame of the Oriental Circlet just didn't fit her very well, or made her maybe uncomfortable or something. Because the reality about tiaras is that they can be very firm and rigid like this. So you really need to have a particular head circumference or head shape to fit them well, because they weren't fit for you. They weren't fit for the person currently wearing them. They were fit for somebody, let's say, a couple hundred years ago. Maybe not a couple hundred, 100 or 200 years ago. That's who they were fitted for. And sometimes if you're not the same shape, if the tiara is very rigid and difficult to, let's say, move, then that might be a tiara you don't gravitate towards because it's really uncomfortable. And there's ways you can change that up, but I can't help but wonder, given that Camilla went with the Grenville Kokoshnik, which is a lower profile, I would argue probably lighter tiara. She went with the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland, which might be lighter than the Oriental Circlet, although the Oriental Circlet has a lot of voids, so maybe it doesn't weigh quite as much. Although let's discuss the diamond count. So we don't have, let's say, or at least I can't find one right now, a number of diamonds that is in the tiara. That would be helpful to know. So we can't really compare, but the Oriental Circlet maybe is a little bit heavier and something Camilla is not as comfortable with. That's a possibility. Or it could be that Camilla just didn't want to wear it and said, Catherine, here's the one tiara we have sort of German providence, because the other tiaras that Albert has designed are no longer within the British royal family. And so here's one you can wear. And that's really cool. That's really cool. But it also raises some interesting questions because obviously there's been a lot of speculation about King Charles's health and how close Catherine and William are to the throne. So it could be that it was a reflection of things sort of moving behind the scenes. Don't want to think in that direction, but that's a possibility. as well. But I am hoping this means more opening up the vaults. However, we do also have an outlier in this situation, and that is Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, who is stuck with her aquamarine necklace tiara. We have seen Sophie wear something new, which was the lotus flower back in 2024. But we haven't seen a difference like that since. Queen Camilla has worn the aquamarine ribbon tiara that Sophie has worn. And Sophie, I believe, for the last 3 states visits, have just worn her aquamarine necklace tiara. And one of the critiques I've had of the British royals for a long time is that they are sort of having a system where only one person gets to wear a particular tiara basically for their lifetime. That's been sort of the British system. And we're seeing that slowly change and evolve, especially with Catherine wearing the sapphire rose and now the Oriental Circlet. But I want to see Sophie get something new. Give her the Queen Mary's bandeau, give her the sunburst, give her something, please. So she doesn't get stuck with the same tiara all the time. It may again be her personal preference, but she was also wearing her aquamarine necklace tiara with sapphire and diamond jewelry. So that's a little odd, as if she just didn't have something else. Sophie's worked hard enough. She deserves more access to the vault. If she's not getting it, she deserves it. That's my personal opinion. I'm sticking to it. And again, we have Princess Anne, who probably, I don't think, cares either way and is probably not going to want to dig in more to the vault and is completely content with her collection. But I'm really hoping this signifies again, although we've had some false hope before, we've had false starts when it comes to sharing in the Brits, but I'm really hoping we see more sharing. And what is interesting as well to consider is that a lot of the pieces Catherine has been allowed to wear that hasn't been out of the vault in quite a while and these sorts of things belong to the Queen Mother. So it could be Catherine wanting to connect herself more to her great grandmother in law or seeing herself as sort of an extension of that style of being royal. I don't know. Either way, though, I'm very happy to see a new tiara. I'm again not sure it worked quite right with Catherine. I liked her dress, but it wasn't like super exciting. I still love the dress from September at the US state visit. That is my favorite dress appearance of Catherine's this year for sure. I think in order, I would go probably the US state visit, maybe the French one, and then the German one at the bottom if I was looking at all 3. And I do also like that Catherine and William are giving us a portrait of themselves before the state visit. I think that's lovely. Interesting to note as well. It also was taken at Frogmore House, which is not Harry and Meghan's home. They had Frogmore Cottage. Frogmore House is where Harry and Meghan had their reception. And many speculate it's the house they originally wanted. And so Catherine and William took their pictures there, which, like, again, I'm thinking to myself, okay, what does that mean that they took the pictures there? Like, do they get set up there? Is that like their pre-prep for the state visit, state banquet? I want to know. Also interesting to note, Claudia Schiffer, the supermodel, was there, given quite a close place of prominence, just one seat away from King Charles, sitting right next to the Prime Minister of the UK. I'm not sure quite why, because obviously she's not a diplomat. She does live in the UK and she is from Germany, but I felt like she got quite a high status because the guys wanted to sit next to a supermodel. Again, that's just me speculating, but very exciting things afoot. And after a couple of false starts, Catherine and Camilla, I want to see you guys go full force. Let's have a lot of fun next year with tiaras because I love tiaras. I love seeing tiaras and I love seeing the ladies in the tiaras. But before we go, I do have to say, I wish we would get better video from the Brits and better pictures because some of the video quality and the picture quality is just bad. Again. But overall, guys, I am absolutely ecstatic to see this. So excited for what this might hold for the future. You guys let me know what you think of Catherine's appearance, and I shall speak to you again very soon. Bye.
We don't count the carats, we count the centuries.